And in the spirit of the new year, we will ring the chime as we start our service today. And we will now begin with Spirit of Life Today by Phil Dutton. Welcome. It is good to start our new year together, to be together as we bring in 2021. I'm Sue Browning. I am the minister who serves the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Easton and the Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River. And it's actually pretty amazing that that has become sort of a normal sentence, that we have, over this course of the year, something we totally did not expect last year, found a way to worship together. One never knows what a year might bring. We come together today to reflect. One of my favorite questions is always to ask people, what do you want less of in the new year? How would we make room for more of what we hope for? Those are questions we asked last year, and there was a lot of really heartfelt sharing. I felt like everybody had a chance to speak and give their wishes. And yet, when I look back, the questions almost feel a little naive. It gave us this sense that, yeah, we had a pretty predictable environment, and if we pushed a little harder here or let off the gas a little bit in another place, if we did that, we would have a year emerge that was meaningful to our hearts, that was spiritually meaningful. And I think that's how Unitarian Universalists sometimes approach things. We tend to be action-driven people, and we want to move forward with purpose. I wonder what we learned this year about how much it is we control, how much we don't, and how much we need to be open to the unfolding. Because we are a faith tradition that believes that there is power in those gathered, that we have power together to hold each other spiritually, to hold each other, our hearts and our souls, for whatever the year might bring. So we start this year, we're going to ask some of those same questions, hopefully in a fun way. I have a couple ideas of how we're going to do that today, but it is good to remember that it is the gathered community that surrounds us in our faith tradition in covenant. If you have questions about this congregation, these congregations, or Unitarian Universalism in general, please reach out. Please reach out by phone or email. We really are enjoying getting to know some different people during different times. So we're going to also encourage folks this year, if you haven't already gotten in the habit of lighting a chalice or a candle in your home, come to services with that available. As I said during the chat earlier, some of the services will be Zoom, some will be pre-recorded. We're going to keep you on your toes as we figure that out. But if you have a candle and you'd like to light it now, it's a good time to get it as we do our chalice lighting this morning. We'll go ahead and light the candle. May the light we now kindle and the time we share together anchor us to that inner flame, that sacred center, which helps us remember who we were before the world told us who we wanted to be. May our time together clear the way for those memories and help lead us back home today. In that spirit, I invite you to hear a hymn we've heard before. It's actually done by the choir. It's partly hummed, but I ask us to center today with these words and images from Find a Stillness. Okay, thank you for that piece, for a different way that we can enjoy hymns in our virtual services. So now we're going to move to Thoughts for All Ages. And a couple of people have said to me, hey, we don't really always hope to have kids that are at these services. In fact, we rarely have more than 1 or 2, and yet we know our children are doing different pieces. So I do want to share with you that I think of Thoughts for All Ages, and next week we're going to do a broad intergenerational worship service. These are for all of us to think and to learn in a different way. And actually the theme for January is imagination. So for the whole month, we're going to be looking at different parts of imagination. So I ask everybody to shift gears to get into your most creative mode as I ask you some questions about the image Emily is going to put on the screen now. So when you see that image, what are the things that come to mind? Okay. Are we having, is it good? So much time this year I've thought about our teachers and the different things there. So I'm hoping we can sort of unmute everybody for just a minute or two. And tell me what you see on the picture here. Just shout it out. We'll see how it works technically. Anybody tell me what they can see here?
2020.
2020 in a year. What else do we see?
Zoom.
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 Connections.
Connections. What else are we seeing?
Community.
Politics.
Hey, Snowman?
Okay, I guess we have to slow, I'm gonna slow us down just a little bit, but we got,
God.
we're gonna go one at a time.
Someone praying.
What else do we see here?
Frozen in time.
In time.
A quiet Zoom meeting.
A quiet Zoom meeting, because Zoom meetings we now know have creativity. Does anything strike you as interesting about this picture? I thought somebody would mention that it was a snowman, but that's just me.
Some of the snowmen are inside, it appears.
Right.
What, Suzanne, say that again?
Yeah.
Some of the snow people look like they're inside someone's home.
Yeah, so maybe snowmen can be inside. Maybe people don't have their heat up. What else can you imagine? What do you think might be one of the challenges of being a snowman on Zoom?
No
melting.
You could melt. What else could happen?
No fingers to type with.
No fingers to type with.
Unmuting.
Unmuting.
No ears to hear.
What else can you imagine? This, I'm hoping the guy, do you think it's a male or female snowman, or it doesn't matter? I don't think snowman.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
No, it's not, it's
Meeting without
a snowman. And what do you think for the snowman is good about being on Zoom?
Not melting.
He can talk to his family down in Florida.
You can talk to friends. I do think it's interesting that some snowmen are inside. He's got a really big screen. I'm coveting the screen a little bit.
But it's not up on his laptop.
That's true. He's got a screen that's separate from his laptop.
I think it's a classroom.
You think it's a classroom.
And not talking is good.
Maybe
Yeah, really.
the chair is the teacher.
I'm
And
thinking
he or she, they have about 5 minutes to teach the class before everybody melts down.
Or the teacher has a meltdown.
The teacher has a meltdown.
No, she's learned to adapt.
This initial frozen feeling when you first, when you're first starting a Zoom experience and everybody's just like, frozen. And then gradually everybody starts to connect and senses open. And so that's sort of an impression I feel looking at that.
Our
Or maybe
thoughts
the bandwidth
from-
is narrow and the whole screen is frozen like them.
So we're going to
I like it.
thoughts for all ages
For the
now. And one of the things we're going to try to do for families is we'll be clipping out some of the thoughts for all ages and finding out ways to send
What do
it
you
to our
want left?
kids. But what I hope folks felt just then was we need to use our imaginations as we see scenarios. We also are
You're muted.
okay. So we could probably go back and spotlight me, Emily, or Bill, and Emily can pull the slide down. See, okay. What I want folks to think about is we just had fun for a few minutes. We just told stories that we could not or would not have told on the first service in January last year. Life comes to us with the unexpected, and some of what we use our imaginations for is we relate it to the past. We think about the teachers that have had to teach through Zoom, what they've had to learn. We see both the limitations, but we see the possibilities as well. So as you think this year, as it gets a little bit heavy, it is still going to be heavy at different parts. We're going to have challenges. I ask you to remember that image. To remember a snowman sitting outside. I know a lot of us had our holidays outside this year with a screen and a laptop, figuring out how to communicate. Maybe he's leading worship. Because I think that's some of the challenges we've had this year is how do we stay together as a congregation? And it's been about that imperfect, but we've done our best to stay connected to one another. And the fact that folks are here 10 months later is a testament to the connections we have. So that's our thoughts for all ages today. And next week, we'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute, but we are doing a whole intergeneration, not a kid service, an intergen service on Dr. Seuss. And that's going to have its own layers of fun to it as well. So as we shift gears, I invite us all now into a time of meditation, a time of reflection. Spirit of life, spirit of love, we come together today to open a new year. We come with our hopes. It's what we do as human beings. It's what we do when something new starts. We are surrounded by the stark beauty of early January. Branches without leaves that allow us to see in unique ways. A greater sense of the wildlife, a sense of all that is surrounding us. Nature, others driving by in cars, knowing that we can't quite connect, but we can see one another. We know there will be new life this year. There'll be babies born, and there'll be milestones reached. We come together this year with these many images. We come with our concerns. We come with our uncertainty. Spirit of life and love, let us be together in honesty. Grateful for the broader picture, and knowing that we have concerns that are unique to our time. May we, through it all, trust that there is a greater love that sustains us, a greater love that pulls us to the next step and the next step. There is something beyond ourselves that we can't quite describe, We don't always understand, and yet it is where we trust. Amen, and blessed be. One of the ways that we sustain our communities is by lighting candles of joy and sorrow. So we light our first candle today. We light it with a special reverence as we begin the new year, knowing that the COVID virus has killed many. We know there are many struggling. We know there are many in hospitals. We light the candle also holding all of the essential workers. We think of the healthcare workers often and know that they are supported by so many others who work in the health field. We're also supported by essential workers who keep transportation and all sorts of basic services going. The candle is also the hope of the vaccine, the distribution of the vaccine, and our gratitude that some of our own members have started receiving the vaccine and are actually giving the vaccine. So let's just take a moment and hold that candle, knowing it holds so much. I'm going to light another candle. This one's for the joys. Easton is now publishing their birthdays, but we still want to acknowledge each month. This is for all of the January birthdays. I'm excited. If you check UU Life out, which is the Easton newsletter, you'll see the birthdays listed, and it has long been a tradition in Chestertown. So for all born in January, we are grateful you are here. We wish you a very happy birthday. I know I've seen a lot of postings on social media over the last couple of weeks, putting 2020, trying to put it in some sort of perspective and projecting the hopes for 2021. It's not that surprising, but I do want to share that something's really bugged me. I have this feeling that some folks think we just passed some huge, or at least completed some huge big exam, or something unrisky or challenging has passed, that we have some risky life event that's just past us. I've heard the term good riddance. I actually had to look up, how do you spell riddance? That we have some sort of a fresh slate as we start the year. I think there's a lot to be said for some of these postings. There's something that feels like cleansing. There's something that really wants to mark a transition from 2020 to 2021. But to me, it feels like we're moving through a much more blurry time. What can we define as done? When will something start? So we come into 2021 facing COVID and vaccines and distribution of vaccines. We come in with the unknowns that go with political change. We're not sure what has been damaged, how it will heal, what's going to grow, what's going to come back as we pass through these transitions. So I wonder, are we to celebrate the 2021 arrival or hold our breath and just let it get started? Or do we just have to hear a message that we need to re-hunker down, a few resolutions under our belts, and pretty much continue as it was at the end of 2020? I think one of our big learnings this year has to be that all of the above can be true. I think we sometimes are so desperate to find out what the right answer is It's scary, and it just doesn't feel quite right as we try to solve problems to understand that we can hold it all together and have it all be true. So what is it that we want to learn from 2020? I know if you're on the call here, you've survived, and that's to be celebrated. And there's also this recognition that there is mourning going on in so many corners, so many lives lost, other illnesses that are ongoing. So there is a marking of sorts on the calendar that asks us to hold this celebration and this mourning. But I think sometimes the holding our breath part is what I've been feeling most from folks over these last couple of weeks. We are waiting a little bit more. We had the Advent calendars, we did all the stuff we talked about in preparation, and yet I feel like we're still waiting. We're waiting, figuring out how are we going to react? How are we going to continue to adapt? And frankly, not that much has changed in the day-to-day between December 31st and today, but there's something in our hearts that feels like it's shifted just a bit. We know we'll need to be practical. We're gonna have to keep our Netflix subscriptions paid for, but what can we mark? What can we use today to mark for this year? So take a minute. I ask you to reflect on 2020. If there's folks, and we're going to have a couple chances like this to throw some ideas out, what was something important in a sentence or so that you learned in 2020? So we're going to do one short round of sharing, and then we're going to have some images come forward and see if we can go a little deeper on a couple of the images. So if we can, I guess, unspotlight me and pass it around. Does anybody have something they learned in 2020 they could briefly share?
How valuable time with family is.
How valuable time with family is.
Don't plan too far ahead.
Don't plan too far ahead.
Be flexible.
And be flexible.
Don't eat too much.
Don't eat too much, okay. Now that ship sailed.
Not too well.
What was that, Suzanne?
I did.
Not well.
How much of the world lives this precarious all the time?
How much of the world lives this precariously all of the time? Thank you.
And we can still learn new technologies, new things, new ways to be in touch with each other.
Gratitude for someone who's produced a couple of our full services. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you.
How much we take for granted.
How much we take for granted.
How much we take for granted.
So I'm going to close this part off. We're going to have more opportunities to share. But I have, and Emily, here's where we're going to share a couple of the slides. So I think Emily's going to screen share. We'll just keep me talking. I've been trying to find a couple of slides as I go through things that capture a little bit of what I've been feeling. So we're going to hold each of these up for 15 seconds or so. Think about how this lands for you. Different ones may strike you differently. I had to do something with all the Facebook postings. So the first one is, we must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. Philosopher Joseph Campbell. Let go of the life we planned. Let's try the next one, Emily. A yearly reminder. There is no resolution that, if kept, will make you more worthy of love. You as your actual self and not as some made up ideal are already worthy. I'm going to actually ask somebody else to read the next one because it's partly behind a part of my screen. Emily, are you in a position you could read that one?
Yes. Let our New Year's resolution be this: we will be there for one another as fellow members of humanity in the finest sense of the word.
Lots of good advice out there. Let's go to the next one. And Emily, could you also read that one? For just the way my screen's set up, it's behind things. So this is probably one of my favorites.
Nobody claims 2021 as your year. We're all going to walk in real slow. Be good, be quiet, don't touch anything.
So I think we can pull the slides down for a minute. There might be one more, but we can check that through. What did those slides bring forward for you as you think about this year? Does something ring true? Is there something that you can imagine building on? I'm going to do a reading from Naomi Raymond from Kitchen Table Wisdom, and then we're going to go around again and talk a little bit about 2021. Her reading: wholeness is never lost, it is only forgotten. Integrity rarely means that we need to add something to ourselves. It is more an undoing than a doing, a freeing of ourselves from beliefs we have about who we are and ways we have been persuaded to fix ourselves. Often in the reclaiming the freedom to be who we are, we remember some basic human quality. What we find is almost always a surprise, but it is also familiar, like something we have to put in the back of like something we have put in the back of the drawer long ago. I think as we talk about imagination this year, sometimes we try to imagine the future and imagine what we're going to fix and change and perfect and be better at. But I invite us, particularly as we work with our children, as we work across the generations, to picture different ways to use imagination. Picture those snowmen at Zoom. Because sometimes imagination, it's interesting that they mentioned the back of the drawer. I think it was about the election time. Somebody said, you know, our ancestors have gone through a lot more than we have, or different things that we have. How do we connect back with those who have come before? And that person mentioned they went into their jewelry box and got a piece of jewelry. I did the same. I've been wearing a ring of my mom's for the last couple of months, because I think our imaginations can take us back. They remind us of places we can lean on different experiences in our lives, places that we've learned new things where we had to, places that allow us to be focused, to be a little bit intentional. So we can use imagination as repair and creativity and inventions, but also I think it's broader as it gets us through these next days, these next weeks, months, and this coming year. So I'd ask us to reflect, to actually take a little bit of time here. We're going to go around again. And the question I'm going to ask is in part, what do you hope for 2020? But how are you feeling entering 2021? Do you feel that we've crossed a big milestone? Are you feeling anticipation? Are you ready to celebrate? Where are you? Because there's no one right answer. How are you feeling entering 2021? And so now we're going to go around again. And anyone who would like to share can share how they're feeling, what they're thinking about for the coming year.
Cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic.
I don't imagine that we will be able to control the events, and taking the message that you've been delivering, I think we also have to be aware that we can count on one another, and that might be the biggest comfort that I take for the coming year.
Thank you, John.
I'm very curious about how the current political situation will play out.
Don't get too political.
Curious.
Worried.
Worried.
I take comfort in the fact that I believe I have the resources and ability within me to address life's future events.
Thank you, Carl. Other feelings going into this year? Any hopes for the year?
I'm feeling a little numb, cautious about thinking or feeling or hoping for very much because it keeps changing and I have no idea where we are in the big picture.
Numbness.
Thankful there are no elections this year.
True.
Except for the one on Tuesday.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Other thoughts or feelings? A sense of this gathered community. Where do you see us in 2021? Where is the congregation in your life? The congregations, this gathered community. A little bit of a rhetorical question, but my hope is that when we're going through the bumps, when we're going through the doubtful periods and the joys and the celebrations and all the pieces, all of the above, that one of the things we remember is when we say we have one another, we're actually being pretty specific for our Unitarian Universalist congregations. It's a place to lean. And I also offer that when things get a little overwhelming or you're looking where to put your energy and hope, one of my other mantras is think local. Big can be hard and a lot of folks have some energy there. But each time we do something small, Liz and I have been imagining what the year might look like for some of our kids. We're figuring out we don't have to solve everything, but maybe a cereal drive in February will work. We're going to have a t-shirt Sunday. We're going to do different things one step at a time, one place of imagining at a time, knowing that it is a blurry time, but it's a time we're walking through together.
Hey, Sue?
Yeah?
I know you don't read the chats. There are two words in the chat that I think are pertinent here: hopeful and perseverance.
Need to unmute.
I'm on mute. Bill, could you say those words from the chat again?
Hopeful,
Hopeful,
and perseverance.
perseverance. So as things come up we're going to have music in a minute. Feel free to use the chat. If you chat, don't worry. We'll figure it out over the course of the year. But what I was hoping we can do now, what we will do now, is we are going to hear the piece of music that was prepared last June for Music Sunday. We've done a lot of music over the last 10 months and in all sorts of forms. But I ask you, as you listen this time to the same music that Emily will put up in just a moment, how are you feeling entering 2021? What might you trust? Where is the greater whole that you lean into? I Believe will now be played, offered by our choir.
I believe in the sun. I believe in the sun, even when it's not shining. I believe in the sun. I believe in the sun, even when it's not shining. I believe in love. I believe in even when I don't feel it. I believe in love. Even when I don't feel it. I believe in even when I don't feel I believe in God. I believe in God, even when He is silent.
Before we have our closing words, just a couple of announcements. We talk about our community staying together, and we really ask that folks do their best to read the newsletters. And if you have a friend who you don't see as often that you know is from one of the congregations, remind them to read it too, because we've got some interesting things coming up, not just on Sundays, but there's going to be a book reading, and 2 different book readings are going on in each congregation that's coming up. That will be a chance to discuss things. We will have outreach collections for our community partners. We are going to do our best to imagine our way through as much longer as we need to do virtual services as we need to. And as we said, we will be mixing up some Zoom services, a little bit more Zoom, and some services just fit better for pre-recorded. So next week will be a pre-recorded service. And here's my challenge to everyone. We are going to do a service, a full-fledged, adult-friendly service around Dr. Seuss and some of the lessons. So check out the online versions in the library. We will have a couple requests. Liz Hausberg's going to help me edit this. We're going to involve our families. We're going to involve the congregation and look at the lessons we get from Dr. Seuss, not just moral lessons, but imaginative ways to look at the world. So look for messages and requests early this week, and make sure to tune into that service. It will be online before 10 a.m. next week. Do we have any other announcements? I see our board presidents are on. Anything else that I need to mention today? Not seeing anything. Anybody jumping in? Okay. One of the blessings of this year has been continued work with one of the the service leaders in Chestertown, and she reminded me, she can give you a little bit of the story, but today Annie Lavin will offer our closing words. She's going to extinguish the chalice at her location, and then we will have our benediction, our sung benediction, at which point everybody who's on this call will immediately just be in coffee hour, which is just a continued informal Zoom. If you need to drop off, we understand, and it's a great place to see Philip's scar. Didn't even have that in the script, but it sounds really cool. So Annie, the floor is yours.
Well, the words that I'm going to use for closing words today were given to me many, many years ago by Reverend Dan Higgins. And this is a name that is familiar to both congregations. He has been both our minister and was a dear friend always. And so these words take me back to an early service, back to Quaker Meeting House days when Chester River didn't have a church and we met at the Quaker Meeting House. And he stood before us with his tall frame and his bushy eyebrows and his serious, kind eyes and wise words. And he said the following, which I will read to you. For those of us who knew Dan, I hope that you can hear his words speaking them as I read them today. And it's entitled A New Year's Prayer. I am the new year. I am an unspoiled page in your book of time. I am your next chance at the art of living. I am your opportunity to practice what you have learned about life during the last 12 months. All that you sought and did not find is hidden in me, waiting for you to search for it, but this time with more determination. All the good that you tried for but didn't achieve is mine now to grant when you have fewer conflicting desires. All that you dreamed but didn't dare to do, all that you hoped for but did not will, all the faith that you claimed but did not have, these slumber lightly, waiting to be awakened by the touch of strong purpose. I am your opportunity to renew your allegiance to life. And as Dan would always end with, Shalom, Amen, Namaste, and blessed be. And now please join me as I extinguish the flame. Extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
Go in peace, everyone. As you have thoughts on what we've talked about today, share. And thank you all who are involved in today's service and all who are keeping our congregations moving in these unusual times. Blessings, and thank you all.